Many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio and welcome to In the Sahel, WADR's weekly production in collaboration with the Open Society Foundation OSF that delves into the heart of the African security crisis, telling the stories and strategies to shape the region's response to pressing challenges. I am Abdullahi Hassan, your host. Last week, we discussed challenges relating to respect for regional balance in the implementation of development projects. And today, we are asking experts from the Sahel region whether the plurality of counter-terrorism institutions is an advantage or an obstacle. Let's start with this report from Sankule Janko about an overview of the best-known counter-insurgency institutions in the Sahel and West Africa.
The anti-terrorist institutions are as complex as the security threat itself. In terms of physical structure, the United Nations has the United Nations Center for the Fight Against Terrorism, promotes international cooperation in the area of counterterrorism. The center also supports member states in the implementation of the world's anti-terrorist strategy. Around the world, there are groups of several countries facing the security threat. The G5 Sahel, an institutional framework for coordination and monitoring regional cooperation in the field of policy development and security, has been a key partner in the development of the Sahel. The G5 Sahel is a strategic partnership between the United Nations, and at the end of 2022, Mali announced leaving the organization. Then on December 2, 2023, Niger and Burkina Faso made up a common statement. On December 6, 2023, Mauritania and Chad, the last two members of the G5 Sahel, announced through a common statement that, taking into account the decisions of their sister republic, they will implement the dissolution process of the G5 Sahel. The mixed multidimensional force is an armed force made up of elements of 5 African armed forces in 2015. There is also the Multinational Joint Task Force, a joint security unit which aims to fight insecurity and organized related crime and brings together Benin, Cameroon, Chad, Niger, and Nigeria. The Accra initiative also came to light in 2017. Ghana, coastal countries like Benin, Togo, and Cote d'Ivoire, as well as Burkina Faso, committed to fighting terrorism by ensuring a clean financing initiative. Recently, the Confederation of Alliance of States of Sahel, comprising Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, was established. The 3 countries have announced their withdrawal from the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS.
Sankule Janko reporting. For us to fully understand and appreciate today's discussion, we need to have a deep reflection on why there are so many counter-terrorism institutions. The Sahel region facing and fighting nearly a 15-year insurgency that has killed thousands of people, displaced millions, and denied populations access to basic services makes for a good location to launch this inquiry. From Bamako, the Malian capital, Soumelala, a researcher and coordinator of the Citizens Alliance for Security Sector Reform, shares his perspectives. Recall, Mali's fight against terrorists began in 2012, and since then, several national, regional, and international initiatives have sprung up to support the country's effort.
Je pense que c'est la logique de terrain qui explique cette pluralité. Aujourd'hui, le terrorisme.
I think it's the logic of the terrain that explains this plurality. Today, terrorism is an evil that goes beyond the territory on which it is based. It is an evil that has ramifications of international dimensions, which means that practically all nations have an interest in putting their hands in the pockets to eventually go to projects that are both structuring and structured, that can come to the end of what is considered as a deep evil, what is considered as an evil that saps all the efforts of development in a certain number of countries, and in particular the Sahel region.
Sape, on va dire, tous les efforts de développement dans un certain nombre de pays, et notamment la région du Sahel.
From your observations and studies, what are the criteria on which the various actors get together and consider fighting terrorism?
C'est une question de dynamique. Aujourd'hui, au-delà de toutes les considérations
It's a question of dynamics. Today, beyond all the considerations, we will say in connection there are geopolitical and geostrategic logics at play. You are aware that for almost a decade, there was an international coalition in the Sahel with the United Nations, France, and the United States at the head, which had implemented several policies and a number of security measures to combat this ploy, to fight this plague. But unfortunately, over time, this architecture was considered ineffective, which has caused this architecture the population curve of the countries in which these interventions were carried out. Today, there are new partnerships that are being drawn up with new actors and with a rearrangement of the logic of the classical alliance. Today we're going to the new logic, and these logics are a mix of countries that are led by military governments and countries that provide their aid, both military and logistics, with full-scale mercenary training which is paid for doing the job. So there is a serious problem. In reality, it's not just the coordination frameworks that have been lacking, as we can see in the Sahel, for example. And G5 Sahel was born in 2014 with the idea of serving as a framework for the coordination of this type of initiative. But the G5 Sahel also did not survive it because the G5 Sahel intervened. It is positioned as an action framework and also observed as an instrument, for example, in the hands of an actor. And so there is a part of the actors, and that there are some actors who did not want to collaborate with G5 Sahel. And beyond G5 Sahel, ECOWAS also wanted to constitute a coordination framework. So you see, there are several types, several actors that come with their strategies. And for the coordinators, you also find a plurality of coordination frameworks. So even in the coordination initiatives that are taking place, there is still a plurality, and this calls for the need to coordinate the efforts and responses. So that's how complex the matter is.
Avec en filigrane des mercenaires qui sont payés pour faire le job.
On whether plurality of institutions is an advantage or an obstacle, Soumaïla Lai emphasized that major world powers influence or support the creation of counter-terrorism organizations, whether we believe it or not, and each does so according to its own interests and vision of the world.
Bon, en termes d'ancrage, je pense que l'Alliance des États du Sahel est quand même...
In terms of anchoring, I think the Alliance of Sahel States is an idea of organization, or if you will, a partnership that has its beginnings. And from there, I think it is a partnership that has not been the subject of specific appropriation by the population. The creation of the AES has been notified and integrated. Now, in terms of action, in terms of assessment of the AES, for the moment, it is too early to make comments on the subject. But I think it is an organization that is at its beginning, and from there, appropriation can only come over time. At the moment, the populations are not really aware of everything that can be the framework of this new organization.
Au fait de tout ce qui peut constituer les contours de cette nouvelle organisation.
Thus, this plurality of initiatives of anti-terrorist crusade constitute an advantage or an obstacle.
Je dirais plutôt un avantage en ce sens que cette idée de mutualisation des efforts avait été...
I would say it is an advantage in the sense that this idea of mutualization of efforts had been idealized, schematized since the early 2000s, notably by the late President Majib Mouawadou Touré of Mali, who had called on the service of this type of alliance, and that said that Mali alone could not face this threat. Other countries may have understood it too late, but they still understood it. And this idea of mutualization efforts allows to raise a certain number of constraints that can be constraints in terms of authorization of pursuits on the territories of the other countries. This was already structured through the G5, which did not work, but which seemed to work in a number of ways with the Alliance of States of Sahel. So it will be about intensifying these types of actions because no country alone can overcome terrorism. We need to take action on a local, regional, continental, and international scale.
Aucun pays à lui seul ne peut venir à bout du terrorisme. Il faut une action concertée à l'échelle locale, à l'échelle régionale, à l'échelle continentale et à l'échelle internationale.
Soumaïla Lai is a researcher and coordinator of the Citizens Alliance for Security Sector Reform. The focus of today's package is on the plurality of counter-terrorism institutions in the Sahel. On this subject, some experts believe that the plurality of counter-terrorism institutions is not only structural but also has something or everything to do with the individuals working around them. You can call them stakeholders or financiers or managers, and they are of various kinds, ranging from regional and sub-regional organizations, banks, specialized United Nations bodies, international NGOs, and organizations and texts emanating from the African Union (AU). All these players operate according to strategies and methods they have defined, which may not be in line with the realities on the ground, says Emmanuel Odilon Kokobu, a political scientist and research assistant at Civic Academy for African Future, a Pan-African think tank in Benin.
Institutions qui arrivent, chacune avec son propre agenda.
Each institution comes with its own agenda. They don't come with the same objectives. They come and each actor wants to achieve results and prevail. So, when you do a good analysis, a good evaluation of the organization, you realize that you have a couple of organizations that intervene to do the same things, to have the same result, and that, in reality, rather than meeting to get results because they are on the same subject, because they have the same goal, you find that there are more competition, exclusion, and I mean outright misunderstandings between these actors on the ground.
Carrément de mésententes entre ces acteurs-là sur le terrain, de sorte que les uns travaillent à éliminer les autres et au final, l'objectif
so that one works to eliminate the others. And in the Sahel, for example, all these organizations, if they had been a coordinated mechanism throughout which oriented each actor towards a thought-out intervention sector, we would have had a more coordinated, more complementary action that would lead to better results. But since there is no such mechanism, we realize that everyone comes, they do what they want, and then we work on the ground. There are double jobs, triple jobs, multiple jobs sometimes. So there is a serious problem. In reality, it's not just the coordination frameworks that have not been lacking. You know that in the Sahel, for example, but all of this didn't yield any results, and the G5 was born in 2014 with the idea of serving as a framework for coordination of this type of initiative. But the G5 Sahel also did not take it because the G5 Sahel intervened. It is positioned as an action framework, but it is observed as an instrument, for example, in the hands of an actor, and so there is a part of the actors, and that there are some actors that did not want to collaborate with the G5 Sahel. And beyond the G5 Sahel, ECOWAS also wants to constitute a coordination framework. So you see, there are several types, several actors that come with the same strategies. And for the coordinators, you also find a plurality of coordination frameworks. So even in the coordination initiatives that are taking place, there is still plurality. And this calls for the need to coordinate the coordination. So you find the level of complexity of the matter.
Donc, il y a besoin encore de coordonner les coordinations. Donc, vous retrouvez le niveau de complexité de l'affaire.
In the case of Benin, Emmanuel Odilon Kokobo was more particular about how internal workings of security arrangement is being manipulated and used for political gains. He says,
il y a un gros débat. La définition qu'on a donnée dans le code pénal des actes terroristes, si
there is a big debate about the definition we gave to the penal code of terrorist acts, so cowardly that we find ourselves attacking political opponents for terrorist acts, for example. So, there is a big debate about the definition of terrorism in the Benin Penal Code and cases of political opponents accused of terrorist acts. While there are terrorist attacks taking place in the north and the population is wondering what we do with real terrorists, so there is this question that has been going on in Benin for a long time, and we need to improve it. It's true that we adopted the law on the issue, but we need to improve on the situation to avoid that it serves as a means of political manipulation. I think that in terms of the institutional and legal framework, there is an effort that has been made, but that remains to be consolidated and to really put at the service of an anti-terrorist struggle rather than anything else.
Consolider et à mettre vraiment au service de la lutte antiterroriste plutôt qu'autre chose.
Emmanuel Odilon Kokobu, a political scientist and research assistant at Civic Academy for African Future, a pan-African think tank in Benin. In rounding up this edition, we remain in Benin, where authorities this week announced that there has been a failed military coup. The information was made public Wednesday by the special prosecutor of the Court for the Repression of Economic Offences, CREAT. Mario Elon Metonu said that former sports minister Oswald Homke approached Jimon Dujoni Tivojeri, the commander of the Republican Guard in charge of the president's security, to carry out a coup d'etat on September 27. Days after that storm, how is Benin and its population reacting to the development? Here is Dennis Fenu, an independent observer.
As far as the atmosphere is right now, everybody is just looking at what's happening. It's a kind of a mixed emotion. It's like we are not surprised, but we are also surprised, something like that. It's like a mixed emotion. Nobody really knows exactly what is happening. Nobody can tell except if you are a member of the government to give the right information. But when it comes to the atmosphere, let me give you a kind of example so you can try to get. Everybody is speaking in parable. Nobody is talking at the event directly. Everybody is speaking in parable because there is that kind of fear. This information, I heard it yesterday that the former right-handed man of the current president of the country was kidnapped. But afterward, we heard he is now in police station. So what happened that the person who was once kidnapped now is found in a police station? What happened exactly? Nobody knows that middle information. If you ask any Beninese now, they will tell you elephants are fighting among themselves. They're out of it. You will be crushed.
Well, whether this is a case of two elephants fighting or family affair, there've also been reports that the strong business tycoon is yet to declare, but he's aiming to be president of the country come the next presidential election. So this could be one of the many theories or hypotheses for why this has emerged.
About the political situation of our country, I rarely talk about it. Not because I don't want to, or not because I don't have something to say, but it's a matter of priority, insecurity, also and vision, okay? But shall I say, the guy has not yet officially declared that he's going to be candidate for the upcoming election. Okay, let me say also, the guy already had some logo made on his name, and maybe that could be suspicious also. That should be a sign, because he has some logo designed and they wrote OB26 on it. So those are the initials of his name, O and B.
Olivier Boko. Permit me to say that President Patrice Talon himself, before becoming president, was a business magnate until he turned politician and today a president. Why should he want to prevent other people from being that ambitious to aim for the presidency? Is it likely that what happened in Togo will happen in Benin, that there's going to be a change of constitution and most likely President Patrice Talon will continue to rule Benin?
I can't specifically say yes or no to that. But what I can say for sure is since coming of our president, when you hear something and we call it a rumor, mostly it becomes a reality. When something you hear it is like a rumor, something is about to happen, definitely it comes to pass. It's like a prophecy somewhat, but it comes to pass. So imagine an environment where all the former or the opposition party, nobody has already raised his hand to declare that he wants to become candidate for any party. We heard the other time that they sent a law in the parliament where they would revise the electoral code to favor certain things. And before a person becomes a candidate, the condition has become very, very narrow that it is just a selected few that can have access to that position.
Talk about democracy. Can Benin be described as a democratic state today when people are being arrested randomly and citizens, and including the media today, kind of face this censorship where you cannot express yourself or report on issues as they happen?
It's difficult to say yes, because there are many decisions that are taken in our country and we don't even mind what will be the outcome. Maybe in the mind of the president, for him, when we put on his shoes, maybe the democracy that we had was not the one he needs to get the vision that he had for the country to work. And maybe he has his own definition of democracy that will help the country to develop. I cannot say anything about that.
Rekia Madugu was arrested and charged for multiple offenses, including financing terrorism and also an attempt to destabilize the state. Ivo Kojo and a few others, some of the big shots just before the last elections, were arrested and sentenced, and there are still 7 prison sentences. Do you think that Olivier Boko's trial will be any different?
Honestly, when I heard the news, here's what I said. I said this looks to me like the TV show, the American TV show we call 24 Hours. We know the outcome already. Okay, maybe this is a strategy because we in Benin, we have been studied. People studied us and discovered that our psychology, the psychology of the mass, is that we love victims. We have some kind of sympathy to victims. So when someone is victimized, we try to vote for them. When they manage to come to election, we vote for them. History has shown that. Even the very president we have now, it is out of that sympathy of supporting victims that this happened.
Dennis Fenu is an independent observer. The Nigerian Defense Headquarters said troops of the armed forces and other security agencies in the third quarter of this year neutralized a total number of 1,937 terrorists, arrested 2,782 suspects, and rescued 1,854 kidnapped hostages. 65 terrorist commanders were wiped off the battlefield during the period, the army said. Augustine Kole has more.
Addressing a news conference in Abuja on Thursday, the Director of Defense Media Operations, Major General Edward Buba, said the offensive actions culminated in the neutralization of several notable terrorist leaders, commanders, and combatants such as Monsieur Arika, Sani Dila, Amir Modu, Matawa Bitros, Thomas Benedict, Mohamed Sani, Ramami Tekimbe Njoko, and Jacob Usegi. Others that were neutralized include Kashala Dan Baleri, Kashala Halilu, Kashala Dan Ali Garem Fadama, Kashala Basiru Zakaria, and Ofem Emmanuel Igwe. He also revealed that troops recovered 1,304 weapons and 43,347 ammunition and denied the oil thieves an estimated sum of over $130 million. General Buba added that with the support the military is receiving from state governments, troops will continue to intensify the fight against terrorists and violent extremists until they are completely degraded.
Augustine Kole reporting there. This is a wrap-up of this episode of In the Sahel, WADR's security program in collaboration with the Open Society Foundation, OSF, aiming to tell the African security crisis the African way. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to my guests and colleagues for their contributions. Join this frequency, West Africa Democracy Radio, 94.9 FM every Friday at 7:30 a.m. and the same day at 6:30 p.m. for the rebroadcast. Also, join the discussion on our social media platforms, X, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook at WADR, and stream live on WADR.org. I'm Abdullahi Hassan. It's a bye for now.